All right, Cowboys Nation. Let's get into it because the direction this franchise is heading is finally starting to make sense. For a long time, the Cowboys have been stuck in that same frustrating loop where the offense looks great, the defense looks shaky, and the whole season ends with the same kind of disappointment. But now, with the Christian Parker hire, something is shifting. I've seen a lot of people act like they know what they're talking about, throwing out opinions like they're facts. But the reality is that this move is huge for Dallas. This is not just another name on the coaching staff. Parker is a coach with a proven track record of developing talent and building a real defensive identity. That is exactly what the Cowboys have been missing. Still, let's be clear. Hiring him is only the beginning. The real challenge starts now, because without the right pieces, even the best coaching won't turn into wins. This offseason is shaping up to be one of the most important in recent Cowboys history. And I'm not saying that lightly. This is the moment where the organization has to decide if they are going to commit to winning a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott or if they are going to keep dancing around the issue and hoping everything magically works out. The window with Dak is real, and it is not going to stay open forever. Every move the Cowboys make this offseason will either extend that window or start closing it. The coaching staff, the free agency decisions, the draft strategy, the trades, everything needs to be aligned. This is not a time for half measures or playing it safe. This is a time for boldness, clarity, and building a defense that can actually win in the playoffs. The first big chapter in this story is the free agency period, because that's where the Cowboys will have to make some real decisions. There are important dates coming up, and you need to understand what they mean. The East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl in late January are not just another part of the offseason calendar for the Cowboys. These events are a chance for coaches like Aaron Glenn and Lunda Wells to get hands-on with prospects and start identifying who can contribute. That kind of access is invaluable when coaches are in the room evaluating players directly. You're not just relying on film and metrics, you're seeing how guys respond in person, how they handle coaching, and how they fit into the scheme. That kind of evaluation can make or break draft decisions. Then, February brings the Super Bowl hype. And right after that comes the deadline for franchise and transition tags. That's when we're likely to see the Cowboys make their first major roster move. And if you're paying attention, you already know what's coming. Expect George Pickens to get the franchise tag. This is not Dallas saying they don't want to commit long term. This is Dallas saying, hands off our guy. It's a protective move, and it's a smart one. Because if you don't protect your top talent, someone else will swoop in and take it. That window between mid-February and early March is going to be critical. Once March hits, the real chaos begins. The tampering period opens, then the new league year starts. And everything becomes official. That's when free agency really gets loud. And the Cowboys will need to be ready to move quickly. The big question is, will they have the cap space to make meaningful moves? The answer is yes, because Dallas has a real opportunity to open up a significant amount of cap space if they handle things smartly. There are several contracts that can be restructured to free up money, and there are players who could be released to create even more room. This is where the front office needs to show that they're not just talking about being aggressive, they actually mean it. The numbers are staggering when you look at what the Cowboys could potentially unlock. With restructures alone, they can create a massive amount of cap flexibility. And if they decide to release a couple of veterans who don't fit the future plan, that number goes up even more. Some fans will freak out and say, you can't cut this guy or you can't let that guy go. But you have to understand the bigger picture. This is about building a roster that can win now and sustain success over the next few years. Sometimes that means making tough decisions, even if the player has been solid in the past. The goal isn't to keep a roster full of veterans who don't fit the scheme or the timeline. The goal is to build a defense that can actually stop teams when it matters most. Now, the Cowboys have to be strategic about who they keep and who they let go. Some players should stay because they still have value and fit what the team is trying to do. Others might be more valuable as cap savings. And this is where Dallas can actually position themselves as one of the most active teams in free agency if they want to be. They can create room not just to re-sign their own guys, but to bring in impactful players who can immediately upgrade the roster. This is where the next phase of the offseason starts to become exciting, because if the Cowboys play this right, they can completely reshape their defense. One of the biggest moves I would target is adding a pass rusher Who can change the dynamic of the front? If the Cowboys can bring in a player like Trey Hendrickson, that's the kind of addition that makes a statement. That's the kind of player who can immediately improve the defense and generate pressure that the current roster simply doesn't produce consistently. Once you get that kind of impact player, the rest of the pieces start to fall into place. You don't need 10 new starters, you need a few key difference makers who can elevate the unit. After securing a pass rusher, the next priority should be building the secondary round Christian Parker system. That's where a veteran safety like Justin Simmons becomes an intriguing option. He has a history of playing at a high level under Parker, and he's the kind of leader who can help guide the younger players the Cowboys will likely draft. Simmons has been picky in free agency before, and he sat out last season because he was waiting for the right opportunity. But he's still in his early 30s, still productive. And he's the kind of veteran presence that can immediately raise the level of the secondary. And if the Cowboys are serious about building a defense that can win in the playoffs, they need guys like that. The Cowboys are not going to be shy about bringing in veteran defenders. They understand that the best defenses in the league are often a blend of young stars and seasoned vets. You look at successful defenses across the league, and you see veterans who know how to win and who can mentor the young guys. This is a key part of building a sustainable defense. You draft the talent, but you also need the veterans to teach them how to play at the next level. That's exactly why these moves make sense and why the Christian Parker hire is so important. He's not just a coordinator, he's a developer of talent. The pieces are all lining up. The Cowboys have the cap space, the coaching direction, and the need. All they have to do now is be aggressive and proactive. If they get the right veterans in place, then they can draft the young talent and create a defense that is both physical and smart. That's the blueprint, that's the vision, and it's not complicated. It just requires commitment and execution. The Cowboys have the opportunity to do something special, and I hope they don't waste it now. The draft is going to be just as important, and honestly, it might be the biggest piece of the puzzle. The Cowboys have to get this right because you cannot build a championship defense only through free agency. You need young talent that can grow, develop, and stay with the team for years. That's why the draft is so crucial. You want players who can become long-term starters, not just stopgap pieces. And with the way the roster is shaping up, the Cowboys need to focus on players who can actually fit the scheme and bring that physicality and playmaking ability that has been missing. Now, when we talk about the draft, we have to understand that the Cowboys are not just trying to fill gaps. They are trying to create a new identity, and that identity starts with a defense that can take over games. For too long, Dallas has relied on the offense to outscore opponents, and while that can work in the regular season, it falls apart when the pressure rises. The playoffs are a different kind of football. The game slows down, mistakes get magnified, and defenses that can apply pressure and force turnovers are the ones that win. So the Cowboys need to draft with that mindset. They need players who can make plays, not just players who look good on film. The first thing you have to understand about this draft is that the Cowboys must be honest about what they are drafting. Too many teams make the mistake of drafting based on hype or highlight reels. The Cowboys cannot afford to do that. They need players who fit Christian Parker's system and who have the traits that translate to the NFL. That means speed, physicality, intelligence, and toughness. The Cowboys need defensive backs who can cover, tackle, and play with an edge. They need linebackers who can cover tight ends and running backs while also being able to get downhill and make tackles. They need edge rushers who can win one-on-one matchups and disrupt the quarterback. And they need defensive linemen who can hold the point of attack and collapse the pocket. One of the biggest mistakes teams make in the draft is forcing players into roles they don't fit. The Cowboys cannot do that. They have to be honest about what these players are, what they can become, and how they will fit into Parker's system. You don't draft a player because he has a good highlight reel. You draft a player because he has the traits that will translate to the NFL, and because he fits what you're trying to build. That's why the scouting process matters so much, and why the East-West Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl matter. The Cowboys need to use those opportunities to find players who are not just talented, but coachable and tough. And this is where the Cowboys have to think long-term, because the goal is not just to win this year, but to build something sustainable. The Cowboys need to build a defense that can stay together, grow together, and improve over time. That means drafting players who can become long-term starters and not just stopgap pieces. It means finding players who have the character and the work ethic to develop. You can bring in veteran defenders, but you also need young players who can be molded. That's how you build a team that can compete year after year. The Cowboys have to be willing to take some risks in the draft, but those risks have to be calculated. You don't want to reach for a player just because he's a name. You don't want to gamble on a guy who doesn't fit the system. You want to find the players who are undervalued and can be developed. That's the key to building a strong defense. The Cowboys need to find those diamonds in the rough, the guys who might not be the most hyped, but who have the traits to become stars, and that's why the scouting process matters so much now. Let's talk about the bigger picture. The Cowboys are not just trying to improve. They are trying to transform, and that transformation has to be more than just a new coordinator or a couple of free agent signings. It has to be a shift in identity. This team needs to become a defense-first franchise again. Because if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to be able to stop teams when the pressure is highest. Offense wins games, sure, but defense wins championships. The Cowboys have had the offense for years, and that's been the story. But the defense has been the missing piece, and that's what they have to fix. Christian Parker's arrival should be seen as the start of a new era, a guy who knows how to coach, knows how to develop players, and knows how to build a unit that plays together, but he cannot do it alone. The Cowboys have to surround him with the right players. That means adding veterans who understand winning and can lead, while also drafting young playmakers who can grow into the system. It means building a defense that is aggressive, physical, and disciplined. It means building a team that doesn't get exposed in big moments. That's the goal. And that's the standard. And let's be honest, the Cowboys have had enough of being close. Too many times we've seen this team look good in the regular season, then fall apart when it matters most. That has to end. The front office has to stop treating the defense like an afterthought. They have to treat it like the centerpiece. Because if you want to win the Super Bowl, you need a defense that can handle pressure, that can create turnovers, and that can make game-changing plays. That's what the Cowboys have been missing, and that's what they need to fix now. The good news is that the pieces are there. The coaching staff is being built, the cap space is being created, and the draft capital is available. The Cowboys have the chance to be one of the most active and most aggressive teams in the entire league. They can bring in veterans who can help immediately, and they can draft young talent that can develop into stars. But it all comes down to one thing: execution. If the Cowboys hesitate, if they overthink, if they get caught up in drama or pride, they will lose this window. The time for talk is over. Now it's time for action. Before we roll on, subscribe to Cowboys Wire News, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Your support keeps the Dallas Cowboys updates coming. Tell us what you think in the comments. The NFL rumor mill was set on fire after whispers began circulating that Myles Garrett may be headed for Dallas, in what would instantly become one of the most shocking moves in recent league memory. According to reports attributed to ESPN sources, the Cleveland Browns defensive superstar has allegedly agreed to terms with the Cowboys, a development that has left executives, players, and fans scrambling to understand how such a blockbuster could materialize. While no official announcement has been made by either organization, the mere suggestion of Garrett wearing the iconic silver and blue has been enough to dominate conversations around the league. The Cowboys, long criticized for falling just short in critical moments, have openly prioritized adding a true game-changing presence to their defensive front. Garrett, widely regarded as one of the most disruptive pass rushers in football, would instantly redefine that unit and alter how opposing offenses prepare each week. Sources close to the situation describe the move as bold, aggressive, and very un-Cowboys-like, which is precisely why it has captured so much attention. Dallas has traditionally relied on drafting and internal development, but the front office is believed to be under growing pressure to capitalize on a roster that many see is ready to contend right now. Bringing in a player of Garrett's caliber would signal an all-in mentality, rarely seen from the franchise. From Cleveland's perspective, the speculation raises difficult questions. Garrett has been the face of the Browns' defense and a cornerstone of their identity. Letting him go, even hypothetically, suggests a major philosophical shift or a complex financial calculation behind the scenes. Some league insiders believe the Browns could be exploring a dramatic reset, while others insist this is merely noise amplified by the offseason vacuum. For now, nothing is signed in ink publicly, and skepticism remains healthy. Still, the idea of Myles Garrett lining up alongside Dallas' existing defensive stars is tantalizing enough to keep this rumor alive if true. It would not just reshape the franchises, but potentially tilt the balance of power across the entire NFC, making this one of the most explosive speculations the NFL has seen in years. That's a wrap from Cowboys Wire News. For breaking Cowboys updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Tell us your take in the comments.